everyone, my name is Evelyn Wolf. I am the CMO here at VisibleThread, and I'd like to welcome you all to our first Thought Leader webinar of 2020, how to get the most value out of your SMEs, and we're really delighted to be joined by Mark Amtower today. Before we kick off, just a little bit of webinar housekeeping. Our call will last for approximately an hour. Over in the GoToWebinar control panel, you have a question facility and you can type in your questions there. We have a Q&A session at the end, so please keep post those questions and we'll aim to get through everything in the Q&A session. What we don't cover there, we will get back to you directly, so just please post those questions. I always like to ask, what did you think about our session? So there's going to be a small survey at the end, and I would appreciate it if you could complete it. And as always, the recording and the slides will be made available a couple of days after the webinar. Expect them in your inbox, probably around Monday or Tuesday. Okay, so let's get started. As I mentioned, we're really delighted today to be joined by our thought leader, Mark Amtower. Mark is the founding partner of Amtower & Company. And what better way to describe our thought leader than by saying the godfather of government marketing. So we're very fortunate to have you with us today, Mark. You're an author, a consultant, a speaker, a radio host, and today we're going to have you talk to us about subject matter experts. So we're really looking forward to it. You've been quoted in Thank you. You've been quoted in 250 publications, which I personally find quite an impressive stat. You're known through business talk, radio interviews, as well as several conferences and seminars that you speak at every year, just like the webinar here. And actually, as a matter of fact, you're going to be joining us at our users conference in March as well. So we're going to be looking forward to seeing you in person there. So a warm welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
So when Mark, our CEO, Fergal McGovern, and I first spoke about doing a webinar together, we spoke about two things. We spoke about clarity and we spoke about SMEs and how to bring them together. So what I thought I'd kick us off with today is actually speaking a little bit about a case study that we have that is all about improving Pwin through Pwin rates through plain language. This kind of landscape may be familiar to you. I mean, think about your last, proposal response, your last submission. You might have had several subject matter experts adding to it, being responsible for particular sections. You might have had a marketing team or a legal and compliance expert coming in and giving their 2 cents, adding what they feel is necessary to your proposal response. And what can happen is that you have these somewhat disjointed writers coming together and may deliver an actually quite fragmented proposal response. With each edit, with each section, complexity is added, jargon can be added, and by the time your recipient, so whether that's your customer or whether that's a prime contractor you might be working with, gets this, it can be quite confusing for them to actually get a cohesive message from your proposal response. And last year at our users conference, we were delighted to have Jessica Conrad with us, who's a senior proposal manager at Collins Aerospace. And she spoke to us a little bit about how they face this challenge and how they see this. So responding to RFPs is obviously part of their day-to-day business. And the authors and their subject matter experts are actually engineers. And one of the things she said to me was, well, they're busy implementing projects. That's what they do. They're engineers. Writing is not what they want to be doing. And you know yourself, if you're asked to do something that's not in your skill set, it starts to become a real challenge. You push it out and you start to be under real deadline pressure. And when we asked Jessica to elaborate a little bit, this is what she told us. She said engineers are busy, they don't know where to start or how to write, they have trouble meeting deadlines. And then, the end result ends up having multiple voices. Documents are fragmented. And there that issue occurs where the recipient struggles to actually understand what your proposal is actually all about. So Collins Aerospace works with VisibleThread and uses our technology to help them. And when we were talking to Jessica a little bit about, okay, tell us what actually changed. Tell us what changed when you brought technology in and when when you put that emphasis on readability and clarity. And she said, the first thing is writing has become a lot more fun. And that was a strange statement for us to hear. Writing becomes more fun for engineers, for people who say, well, writing is not really my thing. And the reason it became more fun is because they were able to score the quality of their writing and they could see themselves improving, and they actually started a bit of healthy competition between each other, saying, hey, you know what, my readability score is this, what's yours? And they also worked with an objective system. So there was no more red pen, no more kind of discussion about, oh, so-and-so told me I'm not allowed to say this and so-and-so said that, but I don't believe that. There was an objective system that helped them along. And this support structure was the second point that she pointed out to us and said, you know, our subject matter experts, they find it now simpler to meet deadlines because the writing has become easier. You know, they have that support. They now know how to tackle some of those plain language principles and make sure that what they write actually is something that the recipient is easily able to digest. So it also means, and this is really a key point, that instead of focusing on the writing style, because now they had a system that helped them with that and pointed out what needed to be adjusted, they could focus a lot more on strategy. And when they were able to do that, the actual feedback that Collins Aerospace received on their RFP response letters became something like this. We've had feedback from customers where we've submitted several RFPs. Comments since using VisibleThread have been that our copy is easier to understand now. So with that clarity, the subject matter experts actually made themselves a lot more easier to understand to recipients, which looks great for them. It makes them look much more in charge of their topic, but also it means that it has a big impact on the Pwin rate. And you can see the increase there in the graph. Now, it's not just readability, there are obviously several efforts in there, but readability played a big role in increasing the Pwin from 30 to 80. So this is a story that I wanted to share with you and to frame a little bit our conversation today. And as I said, we're really glad to have Mark with us today, who is going to give us his views on subject matter experts, tips and tricks, and really discussing how we can make the most out of our subject matter experts. So what I will do now is I'm going to hand over our mouse control over to Mark. Mark, there you go. I think you can go ahead and take it from here.
Well, let's see if we can do it as well now as we did before everybody came on.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks for the intro. So how do you get the most out of your subject matter expert? So what we're going to cover today is what is a SME, some market research, why this should be part of your game plan, aside from the fact that what Evelyn just showed you should have convinced you, some of the elements of a SME platform, and then deployment. So, and there we are. So the Office of Personnel Management actually has a definition for subject matter expert. It's a person with a bona fide expert knowledge about what it takes to do a particular job. I have a longer definition, but we needn't go into that today. So let's start with a little bit of market research here. Most of this is current, some of it is a little bit older, but it's still extremely valid. So I'm going to use three sources here. Market Connections, for those of you in the federal market, you probably know of Market Connections. Market Connections does a number of public studies, larger studies every year, and they do a lot of private studies for individual clients as well. But in a recent government contractor study of the top marketing elements, company website, large industry trade shows and conferences. Number 3 was thought leadership, but the intriguing thing about the thought leadership materials. So we're talking about various forms of content here. Companies that developed and deployed thought leadership materials had higher win rates than those that did not. That's extremely powerful, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to produce hundreds of pieces of content. What you have to do is produce content that is germane to a particular audience, probably at a particular time. So the next one is from Government Executive Magazine. Every year they do a leading brands study, and they show the attributes of what federal buyers, influencers, and decision makers care about. So obviously, trustworthiness is number 1. Have they worked with you before? Do they like you? Do they trust you? Customer service, not a surprise, number 2. Value, number 3 and 18, number 4 and 19. But that expertise area has moved up a notch. And again, it demonstrates that the buyers care about working with a company or individuals or both that have a demonstrated expertise in a particular area. That one's government exec. Back to market connections. This is the content marketing review from, I believe, last year, but I'm not positive about that. That would be 2019. So the types of work-related content that impact feds that they read on a somewhat regular basis or a very regular basis: videos, podcasts, ebooks, white papers, case studies, webinars, and blogs. Each of these is ranked here, and insight from industry thought leaders doesn't have huge numbers, but it has decent numbers across the board and consistently across the board, and is number 1, oddly enough, in blogs. I wouldn't have thought that, but who knows? Personal preference. There are a number of blogs that I do read, though, so that's intriguing. Hinge Marketing does a lot of research around differentiation and subject matter expertise. And in one of their differentiation studies, they showed that a competitive advantage really needs or helps companies when they're differentiating themselves for particular types of skills that they bring to the market. So a clear differentiator is definitely a competitive advantage, and subject matter experts are definitely a differentiator. Back to market connections. This is an older study, but it takes the information from the earlier slide and shows you how it ranks during the entire procurement process. So from the identification of the need for a product or service all the way through the award itself. It shows how webinars, case studies, newsletters, ebooks, all of these things impact or can impact the procurement process. And the more you have your subject matter experts involved in the development and deployment of digital content, the better off you're going to be as that procurement comes to fruition. So when you're establishing a subject matter expert's credentials, developing and sharing content definitely is a huge part of this process. So if you're not doing that, you're really leaving a lot on the table. A lot of companies have subject matter experts, but they don't do much to highlight them. Some companies specialize in particular agencies or technologies, but don't really emphasize that adequately or properly. And some smaller companies feel compelled to claim multiple areas of expertise. I'm working with a company at present that does a lot of work for the Department of Navy, and in a particular office within the Navy, and that involves particular geographic region. I won't get into the specifics, but I'm down there to help them leverage LinkedIn and build out their subject matter experts, each on especially through LinkedIn, but then develop content to help deploy that. But one of the things, you don't have to be a subject matter expert for a technology. This company has been doing business with that particular cluster inside the Department of Navy for like 20 years. So they're now a subject matter expert in doing business with that particular client. They know the client, they know the key players, they know the pain points, they know the preferred contracts. So you can be a subject matter expert as a BD or salesperson as well. So key elements of subject matter expertise: deep current knowledge on a particular subject. And again, that subject can be a technical one, it can be a process one, it can be an agency. So sharing that knowledge in as many venues as you can with a defined community. So it doesn't mean deploying it across the board, but wherever you find clusters of that particular community that you serve, that's where you start to share that knowledge, that particular type of content. A subject matter expert should be able to make a complex subject understandable. They will be sooner or later if the area is hot. Take an area like any aspect of cybersecurity. Media is always looking for key people on that. So the media, even the trade media in our market, may be looking for experts to comment on breaking news. And networking is always key as well, live networking as well as online networking. Pardon me while I get a sip of water. Subject matter experts are often sought for speaking engagements. So if there's a conference going on around your particular area of expertise and you've developed and deployed this content, the conference producers are more likely to find you and ask you to participate if you are a known expert in this particular area. You're more likely to be on a recommendation list. So if people are talking about a particular problem, they say, we should bring these people in to discuss it. The next point is personal preference for me. I don't like talking to subject matter experts who think they're doing me a favor, who are pontificating, or who don't show enthusiasm for their area of expertise. If you're good at it and you like it, let that out, let it show. You got to be easily found during online searches. Online can be through Google, it can be through LinkedIn, wherever you're searching. Pardon me. Subject matter experts should be writing somewhat frequently or producing content. It doesn't even have to be writing. So it could be a podcast, it can be a webinar, it can be an article, blog post. And publishing a book should not be a daunting task. Can be an ebook. Ebooks can be as short as 30, 40 pages, but they should also be accessible. So you got to know what you do well. So list your strengths, determine and define your niche position, where you fit in the particular food chain of the niche that you serve, identify the competition, and then start looking for points of differentiating, getting back to the Hinge study. How can you differentiate from other subject matter experts in your niche. So step one for building the SME platform is to build that content library. Content is key to growth, to winning, build relationships online, offline. No subject matter expert can live and thrive in a vacuum. So getting together with other subject matter experts internally or externally or both would be important. Determining the best venues to share your knowledge, engagement again in the community, keeping the learning process going, having information feeds that supply you news on the subject, articles, blog posts, etc. So have certain places that you go or your SMEs go to make sure they're staying current, up to date, near the cutting edge, if not on the cutting edge. And then you start the process again. Being a subject matter expert is not a lifetime gig unless you are really prepared to work and stay at that cutting edge. So the SME market position has to be an area where you have demonstrable expertise, or you have a definable audience, preferably an audience that needs the types of things where you have this expertise, i.e. Contracts, preferably an area where you already have a beachhead, where you've developed some mind share, where people start to know where you are. It should be an area where ultimately you can stand out. But above all, you've got to be visible and vettable. So, market position. A SWOT analysis is really what you need to do here. So we've all seen this chart one way or another before, but just some ideas. You know, what are your strengths, your market knowledge, your knowledge of the client, and when you're looking at competitors, number of speaking gigs they get, articles published, the name recognition factor. You've got to be extremely honest with yourself while you're doing the SWOT analysis. The opportunities, do you, if you're like my client with the Navy, are there opportunities to develop deeper relationships with that particular client agency? There's always more people to meet. So it can be at the agency, partner companies, or prime subs, media, and associations. Are there associations involved with this? The associations are really good because a lot of the associations are the ones that will produce the conferences that the feds will attend, and these are always opportunities for speakers, and all associations prefer to have their members as speakers to non-members as speakers. So your association involvement is key. The visibility not only of the SMEs but of your company in that niche. Are there other places where you can share content? You know, even if it's a speech to a small group. I was fortunate enough last year to be invited to speak at a group of C-levels for small and medium companies that do business in one stovepipe of the intelligence community. I didn't even know this group existed. It's a very private group, and speaking there is a rare opportunity for, especially for a marketing person like me, talking to people dealing with the IC. But those are the kinds of places you look, so you have the opportunity to share, even through a speech that's not going to be recorded, knowledge with a very particular group of people that you possibly need to know and influence, partner with, and subcontract with, develop those relationships. So weaknesses for your SMEs, as Evelyn pointed out, technical subject matter experts are usually busy working, deploying their knowledge, doing the frontline activity, and they have less time to keep up with the market trends. So helping them address that particular area. Threats in the SWOT, all market niches mature and subdivide. And if it's a hot niche, you're going to find more and more people, more and more companies focusing on that niche. That's always a threat as well. So how do you make your SME stand out, stand apart from the competition? Owning intellectual real estate can be a huge thing. So are you developing processes? Are you developing technologies? Are you developing things that are unique to you? This can involve aggregating from multiple sources and then evolving something new. Have you determined the food chain in your niche? Are there 20 other companies, 50 other SMEs involved here? And who's at the top of that food chain? Is your SME going to devote the time to stand out? Are they going to create content? Do they need help creating content? The VisibleThread tool obviously can help you there. The engagement factor is also important. Engaging with your peers, answering questions online, through the blogs, etc. But the biggie is always, will they sustain the effort? So, and that's never a given. Being a subject matter expert is like being in graduate school forever. So, and this is from Hinge Marketing, so I give kudos where they are due, but any intellectual real estate claim that you make has to be true. It has to be important to the audience. It's got to be supportable, and you need to be visible enough to be vetted. I know I said that last part earlier, but it's important to repeat this. So, and kudos to Hinge Marketing for their research in this area. So many companies really do, most companies, I would say, do little to differentiate, either on their website, through social media, through their collateral material. If they produce any content, a lot of the content that I see seems to be more of a me too than a unique perspective. That's not going to help. So I call this the Waldo Factor. Y'all remember Hanson's book from, boy, 40 years ago now? A while back, let's just say a while back. So a lot of smaller contractors seek business by casting a wide net. And by this, I mean, they'll have 30, 40 NAICS codes prominently displayed on their website and not that many employees. So their intent is to attract clients by the breadth of their offerings. In reality, when that wide net is cast, you end up looking like pretty much everybody else out there. And you get lost in the crowd. And that's why I call it the Waldo Factor. It's like looking at that picture and trying to find that guy with the red and white striped shirt and hat. So when a contracting officer sees a company with 12, 15 employees claiming expertise in 20 areas, doubt will occur. And that's when you look like that one face in the blurry face in the crowd. There's nothing to distinguish you, to differentiate you from everybody else. Excuse me, everybody else that's out there. And this does trigger the Waldo factor. You're classified as a generalist. You're one of the nameless contractors. You become anonymous. And the truth of this is the cost of that anonymity is irrelevance. You're simply one more face in the crowd. When your RFP pops up, there's not going to be anything unique about it. It's going to be tossed to the side. You'll get a debriefing on it, but basically that's where it's going to land. So the deployment of content for SMEs and deploying your SMEs themselves. So this will include speaking engagements. So once your SMEs start developing content, articles, white papers, blog posts, etc., you need to deploy these where they're most likely to be found by those you need to influence. Now, for those of you who are familiar with my work, you know that I am a huge fan of LinkedIn. This is the best marketing tool that has ever happened. There's pretty much you can do anything here. Okay, sharing content on LinkedIn as an article on your profile, an article on your company profile. You can share the link as a post on your profile. So when you go to your homepage on your profile, you have two options. You have the write an article or post. So if you're just going to plug in a URL that takes them back to your company website, where the white paper, case study, blog post, video is, so be it. You can put in a little text there to explain why. But if you want to write an article on LinkedIn as opposed to your own blog, you can do that as well. Or you can reshape your blog post, do a Reader's Digest version on LinkedIn. And then at the end of that, say, for the full article, go to our blog here or go to our white paper here and put in the link. You can post information in your groups and really throughout your profile where it's germane. So you can link content directly to your about section, your experience section, a couple of different places on your profile. So this is my about section, and at the bottom, I have probably 30 different links there. Some of them are just pictures, like me speaking at some event or something like that. But the first one on the left there is a video. Last year, I finally launched a YouTube page. So that was one of the first videos that I posted on my YouTube page. So you can link to obviously outside sources, but you can post podcasts, videos, links to your white papers, case studies, etc. You can post PDFs here that people can read. So, and all of this shows up on your articles and activities. And when I say that you need to put content where people are likely to find it, LinkedIn is definitely one of those places. But on the right side, that activity side, this is what's going to show up. If I was looking at somebody else's page and seeing this and I was connected to them, it would show up on my homepage. And that feed is like a perpetual Twitter feed. You've got to be there when it happens. So when you post something on LinkedIn, it's usually good to do it in a couple of different places. So if you share groups with key people, you can put it in the group. It's still going to show up in your timeline feed, your activity feed, as an action that you've taken. But you may want to also take a shorter version of that and do an article. So as this is my job description. So again, the first one there is a video I did with Brand Ready. So it's about a 7-minute interview that I did with them, and they were basically saying, you know, who is Amtower and Company? What does Mark Amtower do? And that's a good thing to have on your experience, your jobs. So underneath that, as part of Amtower and Company, I do a lot of coaching on LinkedIn. So again, I have a couple of videos there, and that one on the far right is a picture of the first LinkedIn session I did back in 2009, the first major LinkedIn session that I did at a conference. So all of this goes to support, you know, you've been generating content for this length of time. This is the area you focus in. So as a marketing guy, I share content on the areas that I help companies with in marketing. So other venues for content deployment include Facebook, Twitter, speaking engagements, articles and trade publications. So trade publications in our market often take outside submissions. So having a relationship with editors in those publications on those websites is important. Developing your own podcast can be a great way to start sharing information, highlighting your subject matter experts. All of this should tie back to your website, though. Ultimately, you want to drive that traffic back to your website so they get a fuller picture of who you are, what you do, what you bring to the table. And again, one place where you control pretty much all of the information that's there is your website. So on Thundercat Technology is a smaller company. It's a service-disabled, veteran-owned firm, pretty well known in the reseller community and the government community in general. Their top nav bar, contract vehicles, partners, solutions, industry, resources, company. If you scroll over resources, you see what they have deployed. And again, this is a small company, so they have white papers, infographics, case studies, webcasts, and podcasts. And by webcasts, I think they mean webinars. So when you go to that page, you have your choice of going to whatever you want. And if you click on each of these, any of these, you're going to see their white papers or their podcasts, etc. So you can pick the topics that you want to listen to or read. It's not brain surgery, but it is extremely important to generate the content, and just make sure your content is germane to the audience that you're serving. So if you know or suspect that an RFP is coming soon for a particular area, think of that slide earlier from Market Connections where it showed the different parts of the procurement process. Develop and deploy your content early to start influencing that process. The more you can get in front of this, the more likely it is that the people involved in developing that RFP are going to see your stuff and possibly incorporate some of your ideas into the development of that RFP. If your stuff is not out there, you aren't going to be part of that process. Dare to see things differently. Again, a lot of companies don't do content because it's hard. As Evelyn indicated earlier, a lot of SMEs don't like to write. They don't know how to write. They don't want to write. They don't have time. But if you see things differently, do things differently, start to differentiate yourself in ways that will resonate with a particular audience, now you have a chance to stand out from that crowd. So 4 major GovCon studies show that emphasizing key skills, that subject matter expert area, are an integral part of growing your company and winning business. So the research was provided by 3 companies, but I referenced at least 4 studies: Market Connections, Hinge Marketing, and Government Executive. So I do consult with companies regarding building the SME platform, content development, deployment, and social selling, particularly LinkedIn. I view these as all interrelated. And I think, Evelyn, that takes me to questions.
Right into the questions, indeed. Oh, so apologies, I actually skipped forward here. I'm just going to have a look at our questions. So, I mean, to be honest with you, Mark, one of the things that kept popping into my mind as we were going through, and listening to what you were saying, is, you know, there's a saying we have in marketing and sales, which is, you know, people buy from people. But I think we really need to rewrite that. We need to say people trust people, especially when it comes to subject matter experts. And people don't necessarily want to hear from businesses telling them what's right. They want to hear from a person who knows their stuff, who is like that expert, rather than actually, you know, having a company produce some branding materials. So that was a thought that kept flying through my mind. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that, but it takes time to build that trust into the relationship. So the more you develop content, the more germane that content is to the audience that you seek to serve or are currently serving. That takes time to build. But as you become one of those trusted sources of information, as one of the market connection slides, so those thought leadership materials lead to a higher win rate. So it's not a one and done kind of thing. Oh, I did a white paper last year, it didn't help me win my bid. No, that's not how you do it.
There has to be consistency, right?
Yes.
Great. Let me just pop in and over to some of our questions here that we got in. So the first question is, will we get the slides? Yes, absolutely you will. We will share everything with you, both the recording and the slides, in the next couple of days. I'm hoping to have everything edited, you know, literally by Monday, Tuesday, something like that. So keep an eye out on your inbox. Let me just get to the first question. The next question here. Do you create a new headline for each place you post your content on LinkedIn?
Yes. Yeah. If you have, you know, I saw something on LinkedIn just a few days ago where the guy used the same graphic for every piece of content. Oh, even though I knew that each piece of content was different, if you didn't know this person, you would assume he posted the same thing like 5 times. So headlines are important, graphics are important. Your headline is probably the most important single part of your content, and that's because if you don't have a headline that gets them to read your stuff, they're not going to read your stuff. So developing headlines, I mean, there's books out there about writing headlines. If you Google how to write a headline, you're probably going to come up with 100,000 hits. I don't suggest reading all of them, but I do suggest understanding what the elements are of a successful headline.
And maybe a follow-on question from that. You mentioned there this person who used kind of the same image over and over, but referring to different content. How do you feel about repurposing content, or perhaps if, you know, say a subject matter expert wrote a great article a year ago, and if it's still valid, then reposting it?
Both. You can take a white paper and turn it into a podcast. You can turn it into a webinar. You can turn it into an interview. You know, case studies, same thing. Repurposing your content simply allows for a broader reach, and turning it into an audio or a video allows for people to consume the content the way they prefer. So I've been on the radio now for 14 years, and it's always been a downloadable podcast. And that really didn't sink into me early on in my radio career, even though it's not a career. But what's cool about it is I have people who don't read my articles, but have been listening to me for over a decade. So different people consume information different ways. So repurposing your content into multiple formats is not only legitimate, but it's nearly mandatory.
And I think here another from that same person, another follow-on question to that, which is around the same topic on different platforms. So the question is, does it matter if you have the same title headline for your for your content on each of the different platforms?
I don't think that matters. I've never seen anything that would discourage you if it's basically the same piece of content and that headline resonates regardless of where it is. It should resonate across the board.
Yeah. And then we have another one here on LinkedIn, quite a specific one. How do you develop a LinkedIn campaign to target a federal government program office?
Well, that answer is going to take a little longer than we have here today, but it does start with some basics. So if you're going to try to attract attention via LinkedIn, the first thing that has to resonate are the profiles. Your experts' profiles, your company profiles, and anybody who is sharing the content. Because the first thing people are going to do when they see content from somebody on LinkedIn is go back to their profile to see who they are, what they do. If it's a crappy profile, your first impression is not good. Your credibility drops like a rock. So that's step number one. Step number two would be, again, producing content that's germane to a particular program office. So if you've worked with that office before, you pretty much know their pain points. If you haven't worked with their office before, your research on the front end has to be very good and target specific things that they need where you add value. Okay. Keep in mind also that content can run various lengths. Some people aren't going to read more than 300 to 500 words. That's why LinkedIn has a lot of things, particularly your posts, that can't run on for days and days. So short, concise, to the point is always better initially than the really long stuff. So you do a drip feed, you get that short stuff out there first, get them kind of wedded to you as an information source. Then when they want longer content, that's where you take them back to the website, get a little information from them for gated content that's longer, more in depth, more technical.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, great. And I think for any follow-up questions, this person should reach out to you directly, and we'll be sharing your contact details.
Yeah. Let me add
well.
one other thing to that. If you're targeting a particular contracting office, procurement office, you need to start connecting with people in and around that office. So anytime you're doing something on LinkedIn, because you're connected with some of them, it's going to show up in their information feed.
Okay, yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. You made a point earlier about networking online and offline, and obviously you network with actual people, so knowing who's in that circle, who's there, that alone is helpful.
Yes.
Okay, we have a little bit of a longer one here. Hi, Mark. You say that SMEs can make a subject understandable, but how do you use a SME who isn't very good at writing in plain language or explaining a concept? Many times I work with SMEs who come and go, and I only have their expertise for a short time. How do I leverage their knowledge and develop good content?
If you can interview them, preferably a taped interview. If you aren't a good writer yourself, bring in a freelancer to interview them with you, someone who can make notes, then make sure you get the subject matter expert to review that first draft content for accuracy before you try to use it. But if they're only going to be with you a short while, um, are you going to retain that expertise after they leave? Are they going to be in your company but in another division, or are they going to another company? That could be, somewhat problematic.
That's true, because we want to make sure that, in a way, I suppose for businesses, it's important to nurture and encourage SMEs, because they reflect well on the business. But if you do have people who move on very quickly, that can become quite painful if, as a business, you've invested and you have somebody like our person who answered this question is actually investing a lot of time in trying to gather expertise and create content.
Yeah.
Okay, I have somebody here asking about a tool, and I have to admit, I'm actually not aware of it. Scotsman, would you know it?
I do not.
Okay, we might have a look on that, and I'll get directly back to you, Steve. We have another question here. When are you doing another LinkedIn social selling session?
Boy, there is a LinkedIn webinar that is archived at a website called Govology. So if you email me, I can send you to that. I will be doing a brand new version of that when Government Marketing University launches their webinar platform, and I'm talking to them this afternoon about that. I'm not doing the live sessions right now because they're very, very difficult to fill up, and it's just not the most efficient use of my time. So recording these. Oh, there's also a version at Carl Dixon's website, but that one's a little bit on the dated side. So the Govology one is newer, and when Government Marketing University launches their website, my webinar will be one of the first. I do these things in-house though, so if you want the live one, bring me in.
And we will be sharing your details as well in a minute. Here's another question that's actually UK related. In the UK, our government is about to start a massive infrastructure procurement. Will there be a session just like this for the UK market? Oh, that's probably one for me. Steve, we'll have a look into it. If you can recommend a great speaker in that area, reach out to me afterwards and let me know. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you'd like to hear from us. You can either email me, or in the survey at the end of this, if you can leave me some notes, that'd be great, and I'll be sure to connect with you.
I have some friends in the UK who are also LinkedIn experts if you need a UK focused B2B person.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. I will definitely get those details from you, Mark. Great. And here we have another question. If you have had some airtime on TV, should you post that on your website?
Yeah, if it's germane to the community you serve, sure, why not? Not everybody gets on TV. Yeah, and any broadcast media, particularly if you get the whole clip. And here's the thing, it's got to remain germane. Not every particularly when you're talking about something that may be a year old. Is it evergreen? Is it still pertinent to the audience that you serve, or is it going to make you look a little dated? Even if it's a year old and your people have done new stuff, it's kind of a crapshoot. But my guess would be, why the heck not?
Absolutely, I would tend to agree. Anything that we produce and we find suits our audience, we do put it out. I think in particular with TV. TV is one of those things, you go out and you do an interview, and it happens at that moment in time, Monday at 12 o'clock, and Monday 12 o'clock has passed, and it's gone. If you have access to that content and you put it on your site, people actually have the opportunity to watch it as it when it suits them. And it gives you the opportunity to perhaps promote it out a little bit as well and drive people to your site to come and watch it for anybody who wasn't able to watch it when it was live on telly. We're coming nearly up to the top of the hour, and I really want to say a big thank you to Mark and to all of you. If you've enjoyed this, we have our users conference coming up on March 11th and 12th. We have a pre-conference day on the 11th with some training. But on the 12th, we have some great speakers. We have Kevin Plexico from Deltec joining us. We have customers from Airbus, BVTI, Mosaic, Express Scripts, and more. And if you want to see Mark live and in person, he is going to be with us at our users conference as well, doing a panel discussion on the role of social media and positioning to win. So very, very excited about that. Tickets are free and you can register. The link is on our website, but also when I send this deck out, you'll be able just to click on this and get your tickets there as well. Just a reminder, we'll be sharing the slides and the recording afterwards. And as I promised, here are Mark's contact details. In addition to that, if you want to learn a little bit more about VT Docs, and that's more in relation to the case study I shared earlier with Collins Aerospace, that's the solution that they used for readability, then you can start a free 7-day trial right from our website. If you are interested in a VisibleThread demo, email us at info@visiblethread.com. And if you have any questions for me at all, please feel free to reach out to me directly at evelyn.wolf@visiblethread.com. Mark, I want to say a very, very big thank you. This was a real treat to have you on. And I think everybody will agree that this was very valuable and gave us a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to do for us all to become better SMEs.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, everybody, we'll be in touch with the slides and the recording, and of course with any upcoming webinars. Just a reminder, I'd be very grateful if you could give me some feedback on today's session in the survey that you'll receive now. And as we said, any questions at all in the follow-up to this, please reach out to us. I wish you a very lovely rest of the day and hope to be speaking to you all soon. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.